Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. I'm sure you've heard me often say that white supremacy loves a cruel prank, especially one that takes a long time to pay off. By now you've heard and seen the statue in New York City claiming to depict a black woman on display in Times Square. Now, it's the Times Square's art program that were the ones who commissioned this work. In fact, when you look at the Times Square official website, you see that there's a whole small army of people who are involved in this. You have funding provided in part by the Jacques and Natasha Gilman Foundation, Morgan Stanley, the New York State Council on the Arts, with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature, public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council, and additional in-kind support from the Times Square Edition Hotel. So no matter what the British stooge who created this thing may try to tell you, it was the white money behind it who actually decided what it was going to look like. They were certainly the ones who looked and said, this is what we want the public to see. When governmental entities put out the call for some sort of public art, especially in a city like New York, you better believe they get absolutely inundated with submissions from around the world. After all, this is a chance for a big paycheck, but more than that, if you're an artist, this is the kind of thing that gets your name out there. It's something that every artist needs. So they had God knows how many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of submissions from around the world, and they chose one from this British guy whose previous works are also of overweight black women. Clearly this so-called artist who crafted this mess, he has a fetish of some sort for chubby chicks, and that's fine, but he needs to keep his own dysfunctions at home. And the reason that so many people are reacting the way that they are is because a statue in particular is supposed to be striking. It's supposed to be impressive. That's why you take out the time and the effort to have some sort of three-dimensional representation of a person engraved in stone or steel. The very medium itself, that's basically meant to say permanence. It's important. And keep in mind, these are your white liberals in a so-called liberal city of New York who commissioned this. Perpetuating the mammy image and falsely claiming that it's all about body positivity? Why is it then that they never go on a crusade to put out a bunch of images depicting white women as being overweight, frumpy slobs? If this is all about body positivity, then it should be good enough for white women then, shouldn't it? But they don't do this with white women. They never do. When you put up a statue in public, it's supposed to be done as something that fits in with the pantheon of works that are in the public, and that means it adheres to classical standards. The point of putting an image in stone or steel is power. That's why you do it. Sculptures are not the same as paintings. Statues are about power. That's why they're usually much larger than human beings, and they're put on pedestals. It's meant to literally make them larger than life, and that's for a reason. This, however, wasn't done as an artistic statement. It was done as a social statement, one of ridicule. We gotta be honest about that. The so-called Times Square art team behind this said that they thought of this as being an introspective meditation on humanity, and that it's supposed to give viewers a unique opportunity to experience Times Square in a new light and share in a moment of personal reflection and empathy amidst the hyperactivity of the district. Really? Showing a very large, obese black woman with her hands on her hips, dressed like she just came from the swap meet, this is supposed to inspire personal reflection and empathy? Now that is just some weapons-grade BS and nothing else. It's the same old usual suspects who are doing some dirt, and they're trying to pretend as if dumping a bunch of $5 words on top of it and a bunch of insincere, flowery prose is supposed to make this thing smell and look like something other than what it is. They know exactly what it is that they're doing, even if a bunch of black people have chosen not to. And of course, you got the usual gender war dead-enders doing their whole, well, black women are overweight shtick. Stop being stuck on stupid. Black women could, as a group, be fitness models, and these white people would still have put this out there. Hollywood made Hattie McDaniel the avatar for black women 80 years ago. Was that because all black women were running around being overweight? You look at the depictions of George Washington, and he's always shown as being physically fit, and a number of sculptures of him have the nerve to show him as some muscular, roided-up god. But the real George Washington was a pot-bellied, balding redneck from Virginia with rotten teeth. Elvis Presley is another one. He was an obese slob, especially at the end of his life, and yet not one of the statues of him shows him like that. Instead, they all show him the way he was as a young man, very young, because when white people make statues of other white people, they want them to fit an ideal. It's meant as a way to glorify themselves. So let's stop making excuses for the inexcusable. Now, as you can see, I also included a picture of another famous New York City sculpture called Fearless Girl. You'll recall this one was put on display in New York City, and it was commissioned by State Street Global Advisors. That's an investment management firm. And of course, you notice that when these white people have a depiction of a little white girl, she's depicted as austere and dignified. Even the clothing that she wears is not sloppy, not sassy. She's not shown as being tired or worn down, as I've seen some people try to defend that other sculpture as being. See, Fearless Girl was meant to send a clear message about gender and feminine power. And it was no accident. They wanted to show a female figure challenging the power of Wall Street. And they made certain that it was a white female that they showed doing it, even though they, white women, are also one half of white supremacy. Look, even if you want to say that this statue is not significant, that's fine. In an existential sense, that's true. But we're not talking about abstractions here. We're not talking about the grand scheme of things. We're talking about the real world. And in the real world, the question is, why did these white people put time and money into putting something like this on display in the first place? It was white people in New York using their money that decided to put this on display in the first place. And we've seen this one before, plenty of times. Remember the so-called sculpture in Boston a couple of years back that we were told was supposed to be a memorial to Dr. Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King? There was a controversy about that one too, because it was clear the people behind it went out of their way to choose something that was odd. This wasn't a monument. It was white people having themselves a typical sick joke. And that absurdity had to go through a number of different white committees before it was finally created, just like this sculpture in New York. So it wasn't just one or two bad actors here. This was a manifestation of the system of white supremacy that we're fighting against. Look at this thing. Two pairs of disembodied arms, faceless, and more of an oddity than anything else. This is how white power sees black people. Sources of labor and productivity, but not human beings. And just like with that statue in New York, they also made sure to have a front Negro as their crash dummy on this one too. Too many black people have deep-seated internalized racism and are so busy trying to impress white donors that they've become willing agents of anti-black racism. You know, your image matters. Your image is important. Primarily because as human beings, we are image-based creatures. We take in fully 80% of our data through our eyes. Dr. John Henrik Clarke talked about the importance of protecting your image. As he put it, the white media is out to control image. If they can control what you see, then they can control how you see yourself. And if they can control how you see yourself, then they can control what you do about yourself. And even if your brain is stuck on stupid and after all this you still want to insist that this statue isn't so wrong, there's still one big problem that can't be denied. Nobody asked for this. Don't let anyone tell you that this was being done as a favor or a compliment to black women. It wasn't. This falls in the same category as making Juneteenth a national holiday. This is white power giving itself a gift, in this case the public equivalent of a satirical gift card, and then lying through their teeth and claiming why they did this for you. Black Americans demand tangibles, but they're trying to buy us off with gestures. If you're silly enough to try to praise this crap, it's because you're spiritually defeated. You're more willing to roll over and accept insults instead of calling them out and making it clear you're not going to accept anything other than the respect and honor that you're supposed to have. You teach people how to treat you. The bastards spit in your face and you decide to smile and say thank you, that teaches them that you like it. When people are used to losing, a lot of them will be so beaten down and defeated that they just stop fighting. In fact, a lot of them will just start trying to find ways to tell themselves it's not so bad. They'll try to tell themselves that the defeat is actually good for them. And that's how you dial yourself in to be oppressed for the long haul. And it's also wrong to use shaming tactics like black women are all overweight. First of all, that's not true. Second of all, black women didn't commission this nonsense. And also, public displays are not based on demographic statistics. They're based on ideal representations. Rather than being stuck on the object of this nonsense, you need to be asking about the people behind it. They're the ones who wanted this out here. It wouldn't exist without their money, and it wouldn't exist without their authorization. So if you're not focusing on them, you're missing the point. Though even if this statue was a dignified representation of a black woman, that still doesn't erase the fact that this isn't what black people are demanding. This is, even at best, a distraction, nothing more, just like Juneteenth. You want to make a statue representing black Americans? Try one that shows us as we truly are. And that is a conscientious and courageous people who are the only ones with the guts to wage the fight for justice in the world today. Any depiction or representation of us that does not show us in our full power, that does not show us as the people that everyone ought to be looking up to, is wrong. Full stop. Though I would say that the only other acceptable representation of us would be to show us demanding what's ours, like reparations. Now that's a statement worth being put in Times Square. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Miss Debbie, Sean, Jack Smith, Terrence Pitts, and Deep Eye 904. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.